Hey everyone, welcome back to the Migrants podcast. This episode is powered by Transmission House. We Belong is the only nationwide charity run by young migrants campaigning for our rights to belong in the UK. So, my name is Abdullahi Yusuf, and today I am joined by
Hillary, also known as Seun, and we're also joined by our very special guest.
Oh, I feel so special. Mariam, the Policy and Public Affairs lead at We Belong.
Welcome back, Mariam. As you guys would have remembered, so Mariam was here, I think, a couple of episodes ago. I think season 2. So she's back. So
back.
today, this episode is dedicated to sharing our lived experiences as core group members of We Belong, and also young people on navigating barriers that impact young migrants with precarious statuses growing up in the UK. So for this episode, our mood word is
Resilience, because you need to be resilient to navigate the UK political system and its barriers as well as just immigration. And these barriers aren't isolated, they're often stacked, interrelated and intersectional.
Right. So for today, we will have 3 discussion points. I think our first one is we're going to be focusing on the mental health impact of the immigration process, and the second one we're going to be talking about what NRPF is all about, and the third one.
The current political landscape and We Belong's work and basically just support, and if you're a young migrant yourself,
Yes.
we're just going to be sharing like a lot of resources that can just help you navigate this very confusing system that we now live in.
So basically today is just vibes and just hearing from Mariam
Yeah.
and just basically conversation on what's happening around the world of immigration today.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So welcome, Mariam.
I'm excited, but I'm excited to rant.
Yes.
But I think a lot is happening, and I feel it's so important to come together
Yes.
and to really I think because like you said, Hillary, it's systemic. So it's not an individual issue. It's
No.
policies that are being imposed on groups to live by, and it's going to affect people's every day. So it's important for those very people to come together to say how do they feel by that, and then discuss whether it's something that they feel like is more fair, and if not, what do you do about it? So I think it's really important to not allow policies just to be thrown out there without being challenged, without being
Yeah.
addressed.
I completely agree because
I definitely agree
yeah.
with that, with the policies just being thrown out there. I think one of the main issues with that is just because the people who are making these policies and telling us what we're going to do don't look like the people who the policies affect. And when you have such a confused immigration system, you don't have lived experience. So, of course, when you throw out these policies, you don't know how it affects someone. And I guess when you also aren't looking at these populations, I feel like it's a lot easier to just throw out these policies because then I can't lie,
Absolutely.
there is just a lack of empathy. 'Cause
Yes.
you don't see the people it affects at
100%.
all.
Yes,
Have-
100%. And I also think, speaking on the lack of empathy, I think what also on the lack of empathy is also the long delays from the Home Office. Like when you make applications, I think if our listeners know, I've spoken a lot about my personal experience. Being an asylum seeker, and actually we'll be sharing the news now. So and you're gonna be very shocked. So now, finally, I just recently, Mariam knows this, just back in September this year, after my appeal hearing, I've been finally granted refugee status on Article 3.
I know I'm
so,
supposed to hug, but I'm hugging.
so yes,
Air hugging
yes,
again.
well, virtual hug. So I've finally been granted refugee status on Article 3, and my brother has also been granted based on private life. So to just even before getting that status, I've spoken a lot on the podcast about my journey with that, the long waiting, and the mental health struggles that come with that, and applying for stuff, and I've always said when I see request for NI, national insurance number, I just know it's impossible. So it's just the lack of empathy around that. And when I remember even before getting my status, and when the judge made the decision, I also have to get a grant letter that confirms my status and my rights on that letter. Before I even got that letter, I remember my lawyer was chasing the Home Office and was like, you need to give him his letter because he needs to move on. And they got back to my lawyer saying, they have a technical error that's going to take 4 weeks for them to fix that.
My
Just
God.
bear in mind, all they have to do is basically just write in a Word document what my rights are and what status I have, how is that gonna take 4 weeks
weeks.
to get to me? So things like that is that, and those are signs of like lack of empathy. Even still having that status, like there's still so much like I have to do. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But I think it's not, firstly, I'm so happy and like, honestly, just like really happy that you're able to get that sense of
Yeah.
Thank you.
security that you long awaited for. And because like, it's like like we're always in those conversations, it's like when you're stuck at that limbo, there's that uncertainty. But I'm just glad that and it was because of yourself, your family as well, that perseverance. But even though the mood of the day is resilience, I feel like that has to be tiring. Like to expect that for migrant communities to have to
Yes.
constantly be resilient
Yeah.
in conditions that people that don't have precarious immigration status don't have to live by. And so it's just like, if there's that constant expectation, it's like, when does it stop? When
When
does
does it
people...
stop? And when do we like stop being these model minorities essentially?
Absolutely.
Thank
But
you.
I think it's also just valid to be angry. I'm so happy for you, but I'm also just so
you.
angry that
Yeah,
it took this long
absolutely.
to validate and the
Absolutely.
whole 4 weeks delay as
Yeah.
well.
100%.
Because if I can't think of anyone who's more deserving of status than you.
Absolutely.
With the amount of work that you do in terms of advocating for people, and just because
Absolutely.
you're my friend, so there's that as well.
Yeah.
But like, I can't think of anyone that's more deserving. I just think,
Thank you.
although resilience is our midword, I'm also
Yes.
just angry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you have a right to be angry, and I think also it's so important to give space for that anger, because I think that anger can lead to them wanting to change and speak out. And with resilience, I think there's this, people will imply that you just have to remain still, and like, even like you said
Yeah.
about that 4 weeks, it's something that can be done so easily,
Yeah.
just in terms of just a confirmation while
And it's the Home Office. They have a printer, so it's not like they don't have printers.
That's what I mean. There's just apathy because a lot of people who are working home office in these high like sector jobs, they don't have lived experience. They never will or never have dealt with the immigration system personally themselves. They don't know how long it feels to be in limbo. For them, it's another 4 weeks. But for you, me, most people, it's been years.
Yes, yeah.
And it just feels like, I don't know, it just feels like a middle finger in the face sometimes when
Yeah,
they just
and
do stuff
to
like
be
that.
honest, for me, we talk about a lot about resilience. I was like, for me, I'm also like, it's exhausting emotionally to constantly expect that.
Absolutely.
Because I want to be in a position where I don't want to always have to be like strong all the time. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay for me to like be weak or say I'm tired or I can't do this, but because I'm like, for me, it's always like, oh, because I'm a migrant, like I've gone through this,
Yeah.
I've done this
Yeah.
before. I just automatically have to be strong. Like we're put in a position where we constantly have to be like, okay,
Yeah.
this is we're used
And
to
I
this.
think it's also just who gets to be weak in front of the media and who gets to be angry. So why is the anger of people like Save Our Countries valid, but why isn't the anger of like migrants who have been victims of hate crime,
Yeah.
victims
Yes.
of the immigration system,
Yeah.
victims of just terrible, terrible policies against them back to back, even though they contribute so
Absolutely.
much in taxes and so on? Why isn't our anger valid?
Exactly. And also, I mean, I'm so glad we're talking about like being angry, because I'm just really angry with not only the recent news with the
Yeah.
plan for like refugee status, but also with the do I want to say riot or just
Yeah, I
hate
think
march or something?
Hate, racist-
Riots.
racist-
It's
Yeah,
multiple riots
racist
and
protests.
Yes.
it's something I was even discussing in my seminar. 'Cause I do psychology and criminology as a
Yeah.
degree, but it was just basically on when do we like validate riots and when do we not? Like if we look at the London riots and the amount of arrests, how come with this there's been less arrests than the London riots back in like 2011, for instance?
Yeah.
And like who do we validate in terms of protesting and riots and how just media describes that? But also just the mental health impact on like young people. You're told constantly that this is not your country, it's not where you belong. But for many migrants, they've grown up in this country, they don't know back home for many reasons, like because they're fleeing from places of war.
Well,
Or
yeah.
they've just never been back home.
Yeah.
So this is home for many
yeah,
people.
Absolutely.
yeah.
And mentally, it just feels taxing.
Yes, taxing, and like it's so like it drains like your mental health, and it's like the UK prides itself on Great Britain and
Yes.
being
There's
diverse
Well,
and
and
all this
welcoming.
multicultural.
Yeah, there's a wear and tear mentally.
Yes.
And for lots of older migrants, this is like just based on like research that I've been doing it in myself as well, and just like local migrant families. They're constantly in the state of fight or flight because you're told to like expect nothing, but then at this point mentally you're also just expecting things to be better. But then you're also in this wear and tear that anyway, this could go bad, this could go left. And one of the huge like issues I think that's also just increased like this year obviously migration has decreased by a lot. I
Yeah.
think they were saying on the news about 64%, but then also just deportations actually.
Yeah.
And people think ICE is just an American issue. We have our own version of ICE here, and mentally that can be so scary, especially when your immigration status is like. And the government's like, oh, I can just do this, I can do this, I can do this. And they can just constantly change the rules at any time. And you feel like if it's a chess game, you're just like a pawn in the game.
Yes.
They're playing.
Yeah.
I would just say, I think what you're saying is like just a response of like it's practicing refusal of like trying to be
Yeah.
resilient.
Yeah.
And like it's just like, you know, and that in itself is justified. And I know that you did say like, you know, just wanting to be weak, but I wouldn't, and that's a valid feeling to say like, you know, just surrendering. But I think it's important to recognize that weakness is not even being weakness, it's just being a human.
Yes.
It's generally just being a human and just like, just saying that I'm tired, like, you know, and that tiredness. And it's not, I think we shouldn't aspire to constantly be strong, because that's when there's a response or there's a question
that
of
they
mental
can
health.
handle it.
Yeah.
And I think me and Abdullahi were talking about this before we started filming, like who gets the label of being human, and does that get given to racialized like, minorities?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
And
a
we were
good
talking
point.
about it from this line from Community. I think the character's Britta, she was like, I can excuse racism, but I draw the line at Amon Kuti.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so, but like
Oh my
in
God.
that, it's like just multifaceted. Like in the line, obviously satirical because of the show is comedic and it raises a lot of awareness through humor.
Yeah.
But in that line, it was just double edged. Like, okay, so in a sense, do racialized minorities get to be seen as human or
Humans,
full
yeah.
animals? And you can just that can be his whole thing.
Whole
Or in
thing,
terms
yeah.
of media.
But I think what you're saying is spot on in terms of even at We Belong, and when I am speaking to some young people, is that second class citizen. And like, you know what you said in terms of you're not, it's like when you're in this immigration system, you're deliberately, it feels like exclusion, that you're pushed to the margins, that you have to accept to live in conditions that
Are unacceptable.
like,
Yeah.
unacceptable. And it's like, you know, everyone should unify in accord to saying that, like, you know, people should be treated in a dignified manner. But then people that are within the immigration system, the conditions, the constant policy proposals
It's
are just
horrendous.
yeah.
And even just where like a lot of the places where people are being held at, it's isolation on purpose. We were talking about this because me and Mariam just recently attended a summit last month.
Yeah, I
as
know.
well.
Yeah.
Solidarity Without No Borders Summit. And we're talking about just public transport because it's London. I can't lie, you're not driving anywhere in London, especially with like ULEZ and other issues. And like just trying to be there for someone who's in the state centres is just so hard because it's so hard to get there publicly. And I just feel like there's just lack of compassion or just apathy.
Absolutely. And it's something there's
Yeah, I mean, like, sorry, Mariam.
no, please.
Talking
No,
about
speak.
public transport, for me, when I get on like buses, like you would see it's like it's so obvious that like people need the seat, like until like, you know me, I'm not very like. I'm very quiet, so until I'm like, please, can I have the seat? Because they would, and also like, why do people do this? They look at you and it's like,
I
you
feel
know,
like-
you know, it's obvious that I need the seat. Like, why are you looking at me? Just be
Well,
nice
I
and
feel like
offer. Yeah,
that reaction's a reflection of our media, like you were saying as well. Like they're just demonizing like just migrants and like people of color. They're also just demonizing like disabled individuals as well.
Absolutely.
It's one of the things we talked about, I think, when prep for the summit as well, and being a disabled person and wanting to like protest or like go to these and like be an advocate. And it's just difficult for you to do that.
Yeah, especially with the welfare cuts and the PIP as well.
I mean, I'm so even nervous to even like do PIP. I mean, yesterday I was calling PIP to just because I've been told basically that when you call them, they do a what's it called back date.
Yeah.
Back there.
So I was calling to just like ask, like, can I get the application form and all of that? And the lady on the phone was so rude. The energy.
Oh, they do it on purpose. They
The
definitely do it on
energy was
purpose.
like, all I'm asking for was the form. She said to me that I can't get the form until I have my national insurance number. And I was like, she could have said that so nicely.
But then this was just the cruelty. But I think it goes back to, like you said, it's right now is the lack of empathy and just in terms of, I was looking at it, like poverty levels have increased dramatically.
Increased.
Immigration rates, the this government has made a pledge to it peaked to the highest immigration enforcement. So it's just like people are being ripped away from their families, and it's just the impact on that, where there's that constant fear as well that looms around. Then you're also dealing with, just like in terms of housing crisis,
housing crisis, housing insecurity. If you have housing, you have poor housing, mold issues.
Yeah, mold issues.
So it's like we are living in multiple forms of crises, but then when we talk about immigration, I think it's still something that is, and I love the title, it's saying like the not so hidden struggles.
Yes.
But it's forced to be hidden. Like but it's not, like, you know, in terms of when you have these multiple crises, now there's another form of violence for people having to navigate from immigration, because they then can't rely on the safety blankets, like such as the no recourse of public funds as well,
which we'll be speaking about as well.
I think both me and Ladri were saying this as well, but immigration is a hot topic. If you want to be trending as a politician, just speak on immigration and you will get votes. And this is cross-party in general. Immigration is a hot topic just because migration and just migrants are easy to blame at the moment.
Absolutely.
And it just gets to a tipping point, like, until when can you blame this, and then until just actually address the systematic issues that we actually face. Like, when we speak about housing, we haven't built that many more houses since Thatcher. So if we think about it, it's a systematic issue. And if you think about cost of living, that is also a systematic issue.
That's a whole different conversation.
But then
but
how would you feel like, you know, being the youth? How would you feel like, you know, in terms of, you know, when there's constant policy announcements and it's not addressing the root causes to, like, you know, touch on, okay, then we're dealing with a housing crisis. Let's look at from, like, let's take a step back to say, what is the number of affordable housings that are out there? More people are struggling to be able to, like, you know, are having to be moved to temporary accommodation, but then there's uncertainty where they're not giving, still permanent housing. So it's just like
everything's a question mark.
But it's like, but then there's a question for us to say that we are important to reflect what we're facing. So in terms of the political uncertainty, people stuck in a limbo, multiple forms of crises. And you touched upon it in the beginning, to say that the people in the government are not representative, do not really speak on the problems. But it's then, who then, like, you know, what is our what next? What's our what next? How do we get people moving? How do we get people to actually say, if enough's enough? And this government, and what you said about, like, in terms of transportation, that's a deliberate in terms of dispersal policy. So as they move people away from communities to form, and there's that constant moving but they're unable to establish relationships, and people aren't able to actually understand, like, you know, their neighbour, to say what are they going through. But it's like, it's so important, and I think that's with the working group, why the working group was established, because it was just like, we're tired of policies being made for us, but it's not benefiting us. It's causing us more harm.
More harm, and more harm than good. And also just constant worry. And I also think, like, for me, like, with the recent, like, news on, like, the refugee status thing, when I read that, I was like, immediately I said to myself, what's the point of being granted refugee status then? But then it took me a minute, and then I had to start reading, and then, like, just knowing that people that, like, you know, applied for asylum from, like, June 2022, like, that would affect if that rule does become does go into power. And I'm like, how? Like, you already have, like, limited leave to remain. That's like, people have to renew every 2.5 years. And it's like refugee status that you're meant to protect the most vulnerable people quickly, as soon as possible. You're going to make their life even more miserable.
It's, gosh, I think it's just frustration, I think, as well. Question mark frustration, but I think people also don't realise the power they have in just advocacy. And I think in the UK, I don't know about America, but in the UK, we have a very much indirect or passive-aggressive culture. Where we say something, but we don't say something. It's like, I can't lie, we just need to say something.
Say something.
But then,
be direct.
In terms of one of the root issues is just because with policy, there's lack of research before you pass these policies. But for us to overturn policies, we have to do research. But they don't have to do research to pass these policies. Right? In our head, this sounds amazing, but you don't live as a migrant, you don't know the inner working out. You haven't spoken to families on the ground. And I think one of the other issues as well is just the current way we just pass policies as well. If we think about the House of Lords, they don't get elected in. They're just everyone's bestie or so bestie, and they get in. I feel like one of the things that would help is just basically having actual elected people
People,
Yeah.
yeah.
make the
Yeah.
policies.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And I also think like speaking on like the mental health and like impact of immigration systems. I think for me, and speaking on advocacy, I feel like, and also talking about being, it's okay for me to be tired. Is
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like also as like migrants, we often feel like the need of like our career aspirations has to link to advocacy. It's like
Yeah.
either lawyer or something within
Your
the
life
legal
doesn't
field.
have to be
Yeah.
about this. You're
Yes.
allowed to be
Exactly.
someone other than your immigration issues.
Exactly.
Obviously, it's great you want to help,
Mm.
but
Mm-hmm.
I think you're allowed to be, if the word is quote unquote selfish, I don't think it's selfish. I think you're allowed to discover yourself and be something other than migrant.
Yeah.
It's one
Migrant,
label of
exactly.
you, but it's not everything you
Yeah,
Exactly,
are.
and that's something for me as an aspiring barrister. Is like I want to make sure, like, yes, I'll be a barrister. Being a barrister will be a part of me, but also I love doing multiple things, like entrepreneuring.
Yes.
I love
Yeah.
planning events. I also want to be able to
To do more.
be creative and
Yeah.
like not just be in the legal like
Yeah.
realm.
But I think it's like you said, it is. If that's what you want to be, then
Yeah.
it's like you control. Like in a way, it's like you don't need to
Yes.
fit into a box that doesn't suit who you are as well. And
Mm.
even just to
And
say,
that box can
yeah.
evolve
Yeah.
and
And
constantly
it's-
change.
and I think that is the beautiful thing as we grow,
Mm.
as we navigate, we realize that a lot of times, again, it's just like, for myself, I didn't have to go through the immigration system. My mum came as a refugee, but that's not something that I had to see her go
Yeah.
through. But in terms of just with the immigration system, a lot of times people are on that survival mode.
Yeah.
So they're not having unfortunately, they don't have the luxury to feel like, let me start
Yes.
to think more. And then it's like, you get people to say, hey, speak on this issue that you're currently facing. But it's like, you do want to have a space to feel that space of anger.
Yes.
Also just to cope in a way where you're just like, I want escapism. I want to just to be able to not think about it, because that's a
Clock it.
constant reminder.
Why are you calling out my brain right now? Like you just literally what you just said
What you
about
said,
escapism. Yeah. Like for me, I really want to like be able to like, because I've been told a lot since getting my status, like go and have fun and like, because I mean I've started law school, so like
Amazing.
that has been very demanding. So I just for me I like that idea of escapism is something that I have no idea of like,
how to do it, because you never had
yeah.
to do it before. And I
Yeah.
think,
Absolutely.
I forgot who said this, but then how can you, I think the thing is, how can you dream when you've been stuck in the mud for so long, in a sense?
That's
you
a
so
big
much.
thing.
It's like,
And
and also
then-
like spending like money as a migrant. It's like I have to be like
You
very
pocket watch
cautious.
yourself.
Yeah, I have to be very.
Yeah.
I can never
And then
be
how
like.
do you let go of that?
Yeah, and it's like I can never be like Abdullahi, like
I
spoil
think-
yourself or
I think for
go and
me,
do something.
it's not even spending money. I think
Yeah.
I'm stingy towards myself. I feel a
Mm.
sense of guilt when I spend money on myself rather than if I spend money on someone else.
Thank you. It's
There's
like,
a sense of guilt. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I feel like, I don't know, maybe because I have an innate fear of just poverty again as well. Someone who's
yes.
experienced extreme poverty as well. But
Mm.
like, I don't know.
No, but then
something
that's
probably
no,
needs to
but then
explore,
again,
yeah.
it's like you become programmed
Mm.
to like that's your response. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
when it's just like again what you said at the fight or flight. That is your way of fighting. That's your way of like you've created the system. Like you've wired things deliberately with intention
Yeah.
based on like what you had to go through, what you've seen, and also the stories that you heard, and there's that constant fear. But I think it's a question just in terms of how can people. And I think it's deliberate when we have these spaces, like even in We Belong, it's like, to constantly remind people to dream beyond just like, know that this too will pass in terms of the immigration system. But it's like we can't give them that assurance, but we will work towards, like, that's the only thing.
Yes.
It's like we'll build a movement where we'll work towards
Towards-
seeing, like, even if they try to give you that temporary status, but it's like, even within this campaign win that We Belong achieved, that was something that was said that young people, when they realize they have an immigration issue, that's when they realize that they have a status that they need to resolve, they're put in a pathway to settlement, and like, if their parent, let's just say, doesn't have British citizenship by the time that they're born, or doesn't have indefinite leave to remain, then they have to go through this pathway, or if they arrived as a child. But but what they had to deal post the rule change was that they had to deal with that 10 years that they're like, hey, I see the UK as my home.
Yeah.
I'm British, but on paper I have to go through this pathway that I
Yeah.
know it doesn't reflect, like, in terms of it doesn't reflect how I see myself in the, like, you know, in the
Yeah.
UK as a home. But it's like when that rule change did come about, where it was young people saying, this is not, yes, we're told that this is a pathway that we have to go through, but we're not going to accept it. And we know that the 5-year route applies to other
Yeah.
pathways. Why can it not?
Not-
So it's like, allow that curiosity, the questions to say, like, you know, when we do have, again, there's a luxury of being escapism as
Yeah.
well, but when you do have a moment to challenge and you feel like this is unjust, why, like, I think we have to welcome the why.
Why?
And a lot of times this system
Questions,
doesn't.
Yeah. Dealing with
Questions are
uncomfortable
brave to ask
questions.
questions,
Yeah.
but questions also open doors. And I think, in the sense of finding your dreams or identity in this whole thing, I think just start from community, if anything.
Absolutely.
Community has pushed us this far along in terms of we belong. But I think also community has allowed me to explore other stuff. If your root is community, you can do so much,
Yeah.
even if you're not trying to help community in a sense. But because your root is community, you find yourself, but you also help people through that.
Yeah, and I think that's important because that's how We Belong was created, through that sense of
Yes.
community. And I think it gives you power as well, because then you realize that, again, with this immigration system, there's shame, there's internal
Yeah.
shame, and we was talking about that in our trauma-informed training for the focus
Yes.
group that we're trying to
Yes.
do. But there's a shame that people carry when they're having to rely on, like, you know, just like government support. But then it's just like you say, it's like there are people that it's beyond their control, that there's conditions that leave them to be dependent
Yeah.
on the government, and there's also things that are beyond their control as well. But it's like, you know, when you're seeking, and that goes with no recourse to public funds,
Yeah.
it's like, when you're denied that safety blanket, how does that make that person feel? Why is
Yeah.
it that they're having to go through, like, you know, we're dealing with a cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People can rely on government support if that's something that they are, that is
They need.
they need.
Yeah.
But people that are navigating the immigration system, because I think it's estimated that there are like over 2 million people that have
Yes.
that condition on their status. And
Status.
whilst there's some people that might not experience poverty, but we also have to deal with what we said. Like, what we're facing with is that, like, you know, high levels of inflation.
With that status, you're referring to no recourse to public
Yeah.
funds.
Yes. So no recourse. So
Yeah.
that's a condition. So with for example, if you have limited leave to remain, and if you are claiming that on the basis of, like, you know, on Article 8,
Yeah.
family
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
or private life grounds, or so that is a condition that is placed on those visas, but then that can get lifted. So
Yeah,
a lot of people
actually-
don't know
They
about
don't know
that.
it can get
Actually,
lifted.
speaking of that, also as Mariam said, no recourse to public funds, also known as NRPF.
Yeah.
Actually, my brother, his grant letter does it came with the NRPF. So, but that's that's changeable. So, like, the lawyer will be
It'll
challenging
be
that.
lifted.
You can get it
So,
lifted.
With
yeah.
no recourse to public funds, what does that limit for people who don't know what that limits?
Yeah.
So in terms of that limits, anything in terms of welfare support,
Welfare
so like
support, yeah.
universal credit, housing
PIP,
benefits,
yeah.
PIP. Sorry, my mind is
Is
just.
this
So
student-
basically,
is
like,
student
welfare
loans as
benefits,
well?
yes,
Is that
yeah.
student loans as well? Does that cover? Does that not? Cover
No,
it? That's the
you can
question.
access student
Student
loans.
loans,
Yeah.
yeah.
So even
Yeah.
you can access that, because the student loans, that's a whole different.
Yeah, that's a-
a whole
I
different
can run on that.
ballgame.
That I
Yeah,
would
that's
say
a
I've
whole
been
thing, but then that's
since
not-
since getting my status, I've been saying, like, thank God. I
As
don't
a
have to go.
student,
I don't have to go through like
But-
that.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
cooked.
but then what student loans, what they ask is that, like, you know, even when you have a limited leave, they add another condition that people have to jump
It's
over.
3 years.
Yeah.
Because it's like you have to have, once you have your status, you have to wait 3 years
Yeah.
Years.
before you're eligible for
And then-
student finance. And it's again, it's like, but yet if we go back to the mood of it's like you're meant to be resilient.
Resilient.
You're meant to be
You're
resilient.
meant
You
to
have to
just
push
like
through it.
push
And
through
it's
it.
And
constant,
then
like,
even if the person
questioning.
you're speaking to doesn't know anything about what you're going through, or the course was just have like no empathy because they have no training on this whatsoever. They're
Yeah.
telling you one thing, could do one thing. They could approve it, take it back. They could approve it, you could be midway, you need take
Yeah.
it back, you pay them back.
I
It's
remember
a
I
whole-
was this week on Wednesday. I was working with. So as you guys know, I volunteer with like multiple migrant charities, and one of them that I volunteer with, and doing immigration casework with one of the visitors. So she's doing renewing her limited leave, and she's saying that her e-visa, so basically it's stopped working, so it stopped her benefits. And I
Yeah.
remember she said she was calling DWP
Mm.
and speaking to one of the staff about like her benefits have been stopped and she's pregnant as well.
Oh, gosh.
So it was like when she was asked explaining her e-visa stuff, she's saying that like that staff member at DWP knew nothing
Yeah, then
about
no one's giving
immigration.
training. No one's
No one's
giving.
giving
And
training at
immigration, the area of law, like immigration, is
Mm.
constantly changing. Like even with these policy
all.
proposals,
Changes at the
that's going to go
times.
through changes. That's going to be amending
Yeah.
legislation. That's going to be amending guidance. And a
Yeah.
lot of people that are practicing in this profession is that constant updating. Some of them, like, I've heard from stories where some of them, when we belong, like, achieved that the rule change, like, along with other partners, it's like some lawyers weren't, like, up to date with what the eligibility, so there was different interpretation.
Yeah.
But that has consequences. And you're seeing, like you said about the friend that you mentioned,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
unable to access it, and that could be e-visas. There's a number of reports.
Oh, the e-visa
that
system is cooked
Yeah.
as well.
it's
Technical
glitches.
issues.
People's different I think it was like you can't see, like, you can't access your record, and
Yeah.
also people will have different names as
Yeah.
well,
And it
different
depends
names.
Yeah.
on when you renewed as well. So
Yeah.
if your BRP expired, was it before
2024.
December 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah, December or November, yeah. You can't access it. So I know someone personally that it was a huge issue, and just because she had like Section 3C to
Chile,
cover her,
yeah.
but then she couldn't access what's it called, working at all, even though she
Yeah.
was covered, because everyone wants an e-visa.
Yeah.
And then if you'd renewed after, you're completely fine because they could give you an e-visa, but before there was no protection.
Yeah.
And how long it takes renewals at the point to approve. You could be waiting for,
Yes.
I think this was like over a year and a half, becoming 2 years that she was waiting.
Yeah.
But this is when
And this is renewing.
policies don't match up to the. And, like, what, when people say you're right, it doesn't match up to in terms of reality, because the
Yeah.
3C issue has been Ramphel, like, shout out to
Ramphel,
Ramphel.
yes.
They've been, like, monitoring, bringing in cases where people have made an in-time application.
Yeah.
So with 3C leave, it's like, it's covered under legislation that so long as you submit your application on
in time. Yeah.
and then you're making a renewal, your
Yeah.
rights remain the same
Yeah.
until you receive a decision back
Yeah.
from the Home Office. But there have been people, like you said, rightly so, in terms of
And
that
then-
they've done that, they've done everything on their part, but they're not, like, when they get in their share code, it's not appearing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then people have been wrongly discriminated
Donated
in
against,
employers.
especially in employment.
Employment,
Employment, schooling
they
as
just
well.
get scared to touch immigration. Like, oh, we're
Yeah.
scared. We don't want to get sued. We don't want to
Yeah,
do this. They
'cause
just
they're
become
penalised.
scared for it. And so that means someone that's very capable will just miss being hired because
Yes.
of this fear of like touching migrant issues. But on the working day, I did want to go back to no cost public funds and talk about like why it's just so important to address, because for many people, I think most people right now live from paycheck to paycheck.
Yes.
So no cost public funds, in terms of you miss one paycheck, you're homeless,
Yeah.
and there's like lack of stability and lack of support for
Support.
that.
Yeah. That's yes. Exactly.
But whilst I was working as an intern research intern back in 2022 at CEI, so Center for Evidence and Implementation, they did this pilot back in Hackney, and they used like a bunch of migrant organizations to do it, like Hackney Migrant Center, for instance, called NOREAM. So that was the no recourse to public funds early action model. So the idea was basically before, like, most of these families, some of the young migrant children were in care, or some of them were just like locally involved with the council, like through social workers. The idea was before they fell into that institution, there would be early interventions to like try and help. So social workers would help them apply for small grants and so on. So basically just legitimate money they could use that wasn't like free, like government funding, for instance, because they aren't, because public funds. So basically help them. And a lot of people, because of that, they were able to like overturn, for instance, the no cost public fund, because they didn't even know they could overturn it, for instance.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
really
guys, you
public
can.
knowledge.
You can. If you're listening,
Yeah.
you
You
can
can.
overturn it.
There's Unity Project. They actually
Yeah.
they do really great work, and they specifically support, like, people that call in, and then they're having to. It's called a change of condition application. So it's just showing that it's I would say in terms of the evidence requirements, similar to when you're making a fee waiver application, it's to show that, like, if you're risk at
Yes.
being
Homeless,
homeless or destitute, can't afford, like, just
The
like
financial,
basic,
the
yeah,
But
just
financial
a lot of
aspect
people
of
don't
it.
know
essentials.
about this stuff that's available to them.
But that is the thing that is really key in terms of a lot of people don't know.
Information.
But it's like, how then? It's like, when we look at these safety nets, if people can't access it, there's a question as to, is it really designed for them as well?
Yes.
And I think it's like, and it's then really important what you said, Hillary. There are people that are filling the gaps where people, the policymakers, politicians, if they're not really evaluating the impact on the ground,
Yeah.
then what people are doing is filling the gaps to say this is the impact, this is what people are experiencing, navigating, this is what people are saying about like not able to access their show code, and this is the repercussion. And through that, like, you know, even with Ramfeld, even with no recourse to public funds, it's just like people are collating those evidence, and evidence is so needed because it's, you then hold them to the corner to say, you can't just say it's working, because this is actual people's stories. But I think it's just like, you know, really important what you said. It's just that we're told that this is the way the system is, like, you know, designed, but in actuality
we can question it, to be fair. And there's like research that works to prove that this is what could happen if like social workers were more engaged. And
Yes.
this is like pilot studies have worked, obviously only in like small sections like in Hackney, but if this pilot studies with the results that they showed working and helping families, like a lot of families that were stuck in a cycle of poverty, like finally giving them a breather, a lot of these small grants gave them a breather and like allowed them to have stability. If that can work, why can't we make this a widespread thing? And that's what Noreen was aiming to do.
But that's amazing, and I feel like that's such an amazing initiative in terms of just saying what does good practice look like, and not relying on them to tell you what good practice. But I think what you're saying about early intervention, that is so important, because even at We Belong, like a lot of times when young people realize that they have an immigration issue is when they want to go to university or when they want to work. But for us as an organization, it was really key for us to say, how do we get them before they turn 18? So if we was to, and we've seen it, if we was to, let's just say, like, you know, talk more about it and like, you know, train up social workers or go to schools as well, and we catch someone when they're like 40.
That's what we're hoping to do with
and we are
focus group and parliamentary event as well.
But we do have also, thank you for plugging that in, because we're doing it. We're trying to do it.
We're doing it.
We are doing it. But
We're
even
doing it.
for us, is like, you know, we have a legal advice clinic, and social workers have been accessing our legal advice clinics to say, hey, before they leave, like before they turn over the age of 25, I really want to make sure that, like, you know, where our support services cut is, I want to make sure that, like, you know, the status is resolved, and that, like, you know, everything, and that is what good practice look like. But unfortunately, when social workers, in terms of when people are being onboarded to care for the very people that are navigating the immigration system, there's no sense of urgency and no sense of dedicated resources.
I think it was basically what they mentioned in the trauma informed training that it did. I think there's just empathy fatigue as well, especially in like stuff like NHS, social workers, etc.
100%.
And I think it wasn't until working with the legal advice clinic that I noticed that a lot of the young migrants in care, especially with Norim, and the legal advice clinic, young migrants in care also just fill the gap as well.
100%.
And unless you have like a good social worker who feels a sense of urgency, like you mentioned, it's very easy for you post 18, no protection whatsoever.
I mean that's what we like, because I'm also like learning about like the care system, and I mean recently just because I made a film with other young people from Quorum called Glow in the Dark, so talking about youth homelessness. So I do, and it really speaks about young people in care and facing homelessness, and especially like migrants that have to deal with like not only immigration issues but also temporary accommodation.
But then, you know, in terms of stats, there are stats that says young people that are leaving care and they have like, you know, precarious immigration status, they're more at risk of being homeless in terms of than the other, in terms of people with British citizenship. Because of the fact that, like you said, no recourse to public funds, is that once they realise that they have, because of, like you said, the empathy fatigue, a lot of people are working overtime. They're trying to respond to these crises. But the reality is that when the people do leave care and they realise they have an immigration issue, where there are resources that when you're in care, like,
that you could have used, it's a bit late.
And what happens is that when they do realise that they have an immigration issue, then no recourse to public, they can't rely on the welfare support.
They can't.
So then it's just like, even then, and to then seek legal advice when we have cuts to legal aid, it's just makes
it's really hard.
They're meant to be resilient.
Yeah.
You know, they're meant to be resilient.
One of my closest friends is a care student, and he's now doing medicine, and he basically just speaks about just how difficult it was for him navigating, and that's him being a British citizen. Now I can't imagine being someone that's also a migrant, just because a huge amount of the immigration system, like when I was applying for even just limited leave to remain before I even apply for citizenship, it relies on you getting your primary school, your date of birth, blah blah, and it feels like you're cursed by a circumstance, because for many people you don't have parents, so how are you going to find what birth certificate?
Exactly.
How
Well,
you
if
gonna
there's like a
find this?
breakdown in family, like there's a breakdown in family relationships, but it's like documentation. Is a
Documentation,
very key
that stuff
thing.
that many people's parents may have
Yeah.
kept, like documentation.
Or it got
this is when he
ruined
did
or
this, or
destroyed.
it
But-
relies on
Especially
that.
with the type of accommodation that like people are in, temporary and moving stuff every time. I
Yeah.
can't even count how many times
But
I've moved.
Yeah, but then again, it's like, but then where is the discretion for in those cases
Yeah.
when it's
for
just
circumstances
Yeah.
where it's like
Exceptional
and that's not
stuff.
really
Yeah.
there at the moment
that's not given at all.
Yeah.
as well. So it's just like,
It's blank.
but in terms of like, just on top of that,
Yeah.
we're seeing now more like proposals being introduced, like being brought forward, and this is what they're stating their intention,
Yeah.
saying that we want to extend the 5 years to 10 years. So most people are going to be pushed to a 10-year route. We're also going to, like with the refugee, like so in terms of the pathways for them to get indefinite leave to remain, we're going to extend this to 20 years.
Like, if there was a deadline before, you're just making it longer, and then just keep.
Yeah.
It's like it feels like you're a donkey with a carrot in front of you, and then it just following it. You're never gonna get a carrot.
Exactly.
You're just gonna keep following.
Yeah,
But the
and it's like, sorry, Mar,
No,
it's
no,
also like
please
the
go.
constant like saying of there's light at the end of the tunnel. But with this one,
The light is getting
the-
dimmer. I
the-
can't
it's-
lie.
it's
I can
not
barely
even-
see it right
not
now.
even only dimmer, but it's completely dim. I can't see anything.
Yeah, but
I'm
you're
just
meant to
going
keep
blind.
walking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then and something that we have been documenting, and we've said this is, and that was through our Out of the Loop campaign, is like when it came down to the fee waiver, we
Yeah.
were just like, there are people that have like that are in low socioeconomic backgrounds. They shouldn't be
But
discriminated
they've
based on
legally
it.
done it.
But they are entitled to get indefinite leave to
Yeah.
remain. But because of they're eligible to get indefinite leave to remain, but because of their financial background, they aren't able to access it. And we said it's like unless there is like a
pause.
scheme,
Yeah.
a scheme that allows them, such as a fee waiver,
Yeah.
that allows them to get access to it. The longer they're in this route, the higher the chance they can fall out of
Fall out
Yeah,
of it.
so they
is-
have to
yes.
start
and now,
again.
and that relates back to what we're seeing right now. If they extend this, where people are already struggling, and there's the likelihood of people falling out, the likelihood of people just there to be errors, or
Yes.
just you're increasing it, and surely you should, in terms of administrative
I feel
side.
like this is done purposely. The system is done purposely to make it more difficult to get legal asylum, because people are like, oh, just do it legally. If we could do it legally, if most people could do it legally, they would do it legally.
Yeah.
But also, with most stuff, they keep increasing
Yeah.
immigration fees.
And it's
There
like no
needs to be a
break.
freeze at least on
Yeah.
immigration fees, or
Yeah.
empathy for these a lot of many families.
Yeah, and there's no break to catch your breath and actually.
But people are meant to
But
be in
yeah,
that uncertainty. But it's
Yeah.
even when you think about, like you said, it's just in reflection to this is now being extended, the pathway
Yeah.
to 20 years, and even there's the question of for people to get access to let's just say welfare support. They're saying that that's not going to be eligible for people that have that have precarious immigration status until you get British citizenship.
Yeah.
So that's what they're trying to say. But it's when we look at what you just said about the impact around of course the public funds,
Yeah.
and now they're just trying to completely not allow any of those people to be able to
Selective empathy, I feel
Yeah.
like. Cost of living affects everyone.
But the question is, if we've highlighted the problems,
Yeah.
but what they're doing, what's now being announced, more problems are being added.
I did. Yeah.
So,
Added.
but the question is then, what can people do? Because I think there's a lot of people that are just feeling helpless.
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 And when you said about just in terms of the representative MPs
Yeah.
Yes.
not responding, what throwing it back in terms of what would a good model look like? What can people?
I think
Where you go first?
I think the first thing is just you need to have hope.
Yeah.
Hope right now is brave, but you need to have hope.
It's
I
very
feel like
strong hope.
fundamentally, it's very strong hope in the essence of what you're going to do, because what you need to do in terms of navigating this immigration system or even trying to make change is genuinely just have hope and belief, innate belief that things has to get better or things
Yes.
will get better. If you can have that, I think you can just very much push through most things. And then secondly, I think just really being vocal. I remember back in 2021 when we used to do surveys around Parliament as a core group, I used to give people the surveys and people I didn't know about this. People just don't know that what the issue is in the first place.
Yeah.
And in a time like this where there isn't just an issue of information, there's also the issue of the uninformed and the misinformed. It's just really important to just spread the
informed.
truth
Yeah.
and try and basically make people as informed as possible. If you have to shove it down their throat, shove it down their
True,
throat.
yeah.
Just because this is your
Like,
reality, you're forced to
politely.
live with it.
Yeah.
You
yeah.
might as well see what I'm
Yeah.
living through as well.
Yeah,
100%.
and also I think adding on to the point about your survey, like before I make my point, I think also like the life in the UK test.
Oh,
Like-
that whole thing is cooked. I can't
Even the
lie.
English language,
language, yeah.
Requirements now.
and now it's just like, you know, equivalent to doing like an A-level.
A-level.
A-level English.
And I'm like, I know a lot of the migrants that I support that are like older migrants, and they have no idea of how to operate a computer and
Digital
like-
digital
literacy.
literacy.
Yeah,
This
you
is-
said that,
yeah.
yeah.
This is what I was speaking on. I was
it's-
like,
yeah, and it's like how you expect them to, if they've never gone to school before, like never in their life due to like personal circumstances.
yeah.
How do you expect them to sit down and study for like a test that even you yourself that
Yeah.
set it up?
Many of the
Yeah.
British public can't answer the test.
Yes.
It's the most random stuff ever.
Yeah.
I think I was lucky enough to not have to go through it because obviously when I was applying for the internship, I was under 18.
Yeah, you're not
but
right.
I have a friend that had to like do the test like 3 times, and she had to pay for an app.
£50.
Yeah, she
For
had,
Pounds.
the, for the English language
yeah.
test, it's 150.
See, guys, are you
Yeah.
hearing this?
Life in the UK test
Yeah.
is 50. But even with, let's just say, if you, for our rule change, so for the young people, that if they haven't passed the English, their GCSE, or if they haven't gotten, like, they lowered the threshold, to be fair, because before it used to be university degree could exempt you from having to take the English
yeah.
language test, but then because they recognized, okay, it's a little bit irrational for us to, like, you know, for this specific cohort to we should lower the threshold because we understand these are the young people that came
Yeah.
as young as 2 months, 6 months, or just like, you know, that are born in the UK. So to be able to do this test where they're just like being tested on things that they already know,
Yeah.
they went through the English system as well, schooling. So I think it's just like, it feels like, you know, when policies are being introduced
Yeah.
and you're just thinking, who is signing off?
You know,
on this?
these
Like-
policies, yeah. And I think for me, because when you ask, like, what can we do to change, like, circumstances, I think for me, as a migrant, I say this to, like, all young migrants, I think it's our responsibility to, because I know for me, what helped me to understand, like, my immigration issues was seeing my mom, like, go
Yeah.
through it and, you know, try to be as helpful as, I knew then I was young, but it was also helpful, like, speaking like my native language and knowing when my mom was crying or very stressed
Yes.
or when she'd, you know,
And
go to like law firms and they say they had no capacity for legal aid lawyer. It was like knowing those little things, and then when I got older, it was easy for me to be like, okay, how
this
can I
is
help?
how I see what the gap is.
Yes.
And for me, I think, especially when you mentioned the language thing, I think for me now as an adult, when I started uni, especially like last year, I used to teach TESOL as well, so
Yeah.
teaching English as a second language voluntarily.
Mm.
So you try and help fill the gap where you can in
exactly.
language, and like
Yeah.
also just provide translation services where you can. I think because there is such a gap in that, especially for older populations. But I think the thing also, digital literacy is a huge issue.
Yeah.
I think I was mentioning it to Mariam before, I'm like, a lot of people, I can't lie, they can do it on paper. Online, though, I can't lie. It's so long.
I mean,
It is.
I am one of the
No,
only
it's
thing
true.
I'm
It's
good
actually
with
so long.
is Word documents.
Yeah.
The
I'll be
Word document, that's
struggling
it.
with the technology.
Yeah.
So I feel like
Not
the
my strong
system
suit.
is purposely made to be inaccessible as possible for just as
Yeah.
many people
Yeah.
as possible. So I feel like advocacy where you can, writing to your MPs where you can. And if you legally can vote, please vote.
Please vote yes.
Please vote. I can't promise you how much voting can change a lot. And people are like, oh no, my vote. No, everyone thinks their vote doesn't count. If everyone thinks their vote doesn't count, no one's actually voting. And it's really an issue in the younger populations. I think that's definitely starting to change. And I also just think a lot of political parties think that they're assured our votes. I'm not leaning to one
Yeah.
party or the other. Like some parties stereotypically, oh, this is the person of colour vote, this is the
Yeah.
migrant vote. But you haven't advocated for us recently when you're in power. And I think we aren't a two-party system.
Yeah.
Anything can happen. I just think vote. I also just try. I think the thing I'm also trying to advocate for in what I do, like working with like lots of young people up north, is making political literacy a huger thing.
Yes.
There's a lot of
That's
legal jargon
important.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think my mom always says it as well. Like, if you can't explain a concept like in 30 seconds, then you don't understand the concept either. Like, simply, there's a lot of legal jargon that's made to make young people feel inferior to the system. Feel like, oh, I can't access it. I don't understand what's going on. I feel like it's just not meant for me. I think politics, policy, it's meant for everyone. You need to understand your rights, because this is where you're living basically.
And this
The
is your
policies
country.
affect you. This is your country regardless, and the youth are the future anyway.
Absolutely.
But if the majority of people are voting are elderly people, and a lot of the policies benefit them, those policies are still going to be our future.
Exactly.
So it's really essential for you to just have a voice and vote. And I think the huge thing is just basically taking out all the jargon.
Yeah, and I always say, young people are the leaders of today and tomorrow. So not just tomorrow. We start today.
We start today.
Yeah.
So it's your responsibility. It's a collective responsibility. It's not like just my parents or just because I'm under 18. Like no, I rely no. It's like
it's never too
everybody's
late
responsibility.
Either. There's this Chinese saying that basically says the best time to start was 20 years ago. The second best time is to start now.
And I think throughout history has shown that like young people has always been the forefront of change. Always been the people that have the group that have been more creative with with what they want change to be, and the older generation benefiting from it because we become more complacent.
Exactly.
As we get older, we start to accept conditions where we're just thinking this has to be the way that it is, but it's like no, it doesn't need to be the way that it is. Things can change.
The system can change.
Absolutely.
Revolution. We've seen it happen multiple times in the past. Right now, actually, young people around the world are revolting in different places, and the revolution will not be televised. That is what I'm saying.
And you know what? And like you said, it starts with those political education. It starts with talking about it, and also
and asking the uncomfortable questions and sitting down to talk about the uncomfortable things.
Absolutely. But you know what? But I think it's also, like you said, it's important for us not to close our eyes to what's happening. Because there's changes that is being proposed that's going to affect our judiciary, like the courts and like jury trial. There's also that's going to be, but there's also going to be in terms of because these changes are supposed to fix problems, but when you hear the solutions, it's causing additional problems and not going to fix the problem. And it also, there's a lot of fear around even what we've said in terms of if rights are supposed to be there but people can't access it because of cuts to legal aid, then we need more funding. Why is it there isn't no more funding?
I am currently looking for a community care and housing solicitor, and it's really hard now.
But it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be when you're told that, hey, this is something that you should be able to tap onto based on your rights. So I think it's really important to say if it's not working, look at the root causes. And also I would just emphasize is there are people that are out there have that same frustration that are we don't need to create something new. Be the change makers, be the people that inspire others to actually say, you know what, I feel that sense of frustration. What direction should I go to, and be that be that comfort as well, but also be that catalyst to allow people to be a part of those movements and know that change will happen.
And if for some reason you can't see a representative that this is something I really want to do, be that representative.
Be the change you
That's
want to
it.
see.
I believe
you just need to be that person.
Be the change you want to see.
Absolutely.
And it genuinely starts with you, and you'll be shocked how many people you can inspire. That's something I've been learning a lot this year.
Learning and doing, because
you have been inspiring. No, honestly, you've been doing a lot, but you also and it's been inspiring because I think there's a beauty of when we actually act against that title of resilience and we become more vulnerable to say yes, I have to be in survival mode, but I also just want to be still. I also want to be able to to be able to go off the education, hold on to my dreams, but that has to be pushed.
There's power in just everything you do.
Absolutely.
As a migrant, I think, especially.
Absolutely. And I always say, when we look at change, change should be shaped by the very people that have been denied things as well. So it's just that is what we should aspire in terms of getting those very people in the room. But the question is, and I think that's something that we all have to start thinking about, is that there are a lot of people that they feel like they're not well equipped
Yes.
to, like, you know, to be at the forefront or to
Yeah.
shape change, because they feel like there are other people that need to be there. But it's like you said, those very people might not be able to speak on the things that you want to speak on,
Yeah.
but yet they're holding that space. Is like, and I think
You
for
just
we,
have to start, I think, and then from there, I feel like a lot of people also worry about perfection.
Yes.
You just kind of have
Oh,
to
I'm a
start,
perfectionist.
and
I
then
am too.
how can you make something perfect if you haven't started? Like, if it's a mess, but you can change that mess if you made the mess in the first
Yeah.
place. And I think it's just important for your existence to be in those rooms, especially when your
Absolutely.
existence legally is a question mark.
Absolutely,
Especially.
Yes.
absolutely. And I think and we also have to practice that refusal to be able to be pushed in the margins and just to be invisible, to say no, like, you know, like you said, for people that don't know, let me tell you what's happening. Let me
Yes.
tell you
I'm
what this
here.
means as well. Yeah.
I'm right now,
Yeah.
and a lot of
I
people
live
like
it.
me are also
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
I
And
live it right now.
And we're not just going to be like doing the small talks. We're going to talk deep.
Deep,
We're
yeah,
going to
but-
talk deep. We're going to talk about
We're not going to be
politics.
around the bush.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
but
because
I
it is that deep.
Yeah.
And I think when we're like, even for our working group, we always say, like, you know, when we're doing the MP prepping, the meetings, but we say, like, talk to them as human beings as well. Like, they're not, like, you know,
Yes.
they are supposed to be in service
Yeah.
to their constituency, to their people. Like, you know, and if they're not represented, if they're not acting in a way that
We'll call them to order.
yeah, we call them
Yes.
order, or like, you know, look for someone that you feel like, okay, when election comes, but also if the system is not something that you feel like is working, then we have to then look at what is the solution that you're proposing.
Yes.
And I think that has to, and I know we're on survival, like, you know, people are on survival mode because there's
Yeah.
multiple forms of crises. But if we have questions as to the very people who don't understand our concerns, don't like, you refuse to actually, like, you know, address the problems, then the very people that are being impacted by this has to then take time to actually say, what is it that we're saying is our campaign us? What are we saying that is the solution that could lift us from these problems? And then, and that's with, like, you know, with our parliamentary event, what we try to do is we bring those very people that are shaping the policies, that are, like, you know, supposed to be a representative, but the
Yes.
very people, like, you know, that are impacted, to get in the room to say, we're putting the playing field equal. Like, if anything,
yeah.
you need to listen to them. Like, you know, you need to hear them, and that should be, and it's not that the young people are going to say, here is our problems, now you think of our solutions. It's like, a problem, here's the solution. And the solution is very much, like you said, it's not complicated. It could be easily addressed, but it's just like you said, with freeze the fees.
Yeah.
Fees are too, like, you know, fees are unaffordable in terms of home office application. Then let's freeze the fees. Let's look at, can people actually afford this? Are people falling out of status? Is this calling administrative, like, you know, backlog for
Yes.
you? Because then you have to, these people will indefinitely be stuck in the system until you address the problem. Let's come together and let's hear the solution.
Because when you make the immigration system a lot easier to navigate, it helps you, the Home Office. You're saying you're dealing with a backlog of application. It's because the system is difficult for you to navigate as well as someone who's
Exactly.
like looking
So
at
try
the
and make your
applications.
life easier
Yes, it
yourself.
makes everyone else's life easier as
Yeah.
well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think also for those, and I think it's so important just to hold space to, there is a lot of people that are scared right now. Like, there is people that are scared. A lot of people, parents as well, that are worried, that want to shield their children, like, you know, away from, like, you know, just trying to, like, you know, carry this burden of, like, uncertainty, and want to hold that light, even though they don't see the light, want to hold it. And so it's just like, you know, and I think it's from We Belong, and also to, like, you know, and I see with this podcast is like, you then, when you don't see that light at the end of time,
You
by you
create that
speaking,
light,
and by you speaking the truth, by you sharing that frustration, in a way, you're holding a light, because you're holding a light to them to actually say, I'm not alone.
Yeah, and not only holding it, but also creating that light yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Creating that light, because that was something that you know, again.
That's beautiful. That's powerful.
Yeah, that is like
That's beautiful.
something I had to, like, learn from a very young age. Like, thankfully, it's like the importance of, because my parents have always said the importance of, like, learning your native language.
That's beautiful.
And you know, when we started going through the immigration issues, like, that was when I fully understood the benefit of you know being bilingual, is like knowing that I'm able to help both of my parents wherever I could, and you know, if it's like interpreting, or you know, like analyzing a letter with them from, like, the Home Office, or so, because so it's like it really is important, like, for your family to be able to see someone within the family, to, like, see you as, like, you know, someone helping them to create that light at the end of that tunnel.
And I would say this
I
for
do
both
say
of you
that.
two. Both of you two, you guys play a role in terms of, I see it, and sorry to interrupt, but it's like, even when, like, what you do in terms of volunteering,
Thank you.
even when it comes down to doing some, like, what was useful to you, what you find it useful, you share it to people that you don't know. That's
Yeah.
saying, hey, how can we, like, you know, distribute anything that is useful to the
Yes.
community,
Yeah.
to the very people. And I think in a way we might see it as small, but that plays that cool, like, you know, that is a catalyst for, like, you know, for people to have that hope, for
Yes.
people, that relieves people in terms of, like, you know, like you said, it's just like being stuck, and
Yeah.
like, you know, hey, they're one step of, like, you know, trying to get information,
Yeah.
trying to, like, you know, fill out this application to be able to actually be assessed.
Yeah.
So I think we
Yeah.
all play a role as well, and I think those small things, I wouldn't see it as a small thing. I feel like it's, if anything, it should be celebrated, and it should be encouraged as well.
And I
Yeah.
that's why I encourage like all young people, not just young migrants, like share, like don't gatekeep. There's no point in gatekeeping. Like just share it. Like
I
try and
think,
be as helpful as you can. Like 'cause-
nothing helps from a scarcity mindset. I
Yeah.
feel like there's space for everyone on the table to
eat exactly.
And there's never, I can't do this one thing because everyone's already done this. You are uniquely special in a way that there is a gap in the market that you
you
feel.
can feel yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
And let's
exact-
extend that
preach.
table. Let's extend
Yeah.
it. Like,
Yes.
you know what you said? And I think, again, because this is a current, like you said, we are living in that scarcity mindset because of the multiple forms of crisis that we're having to navigate
Yeah.
through. But let's say no to that. Let's do, like, you know, so let's act in a way that we feel like, if I was navigating in this situation, what would be useful to me, or what is it that I can offer? And
Yeah.
it's like, even if it's like listening, even if it's like you might not have the material stuff, even if it's just like, hey, this is too technical to me, but what I can do is let's go on the internet, because I might be good at, like, you know, going on, like, like in terms of technology,
Yeah.
I can research,
Yeah.
I can do something. So it's just
Do
like create a
something,
list
yeah.
of, like, you know, organization that can direct you and pinpoint. But I think it's just, how do we, with the resources that we have,
Yeah.
with, like, even just the feelings that we share, how do we then just make sure that people become more, like, you know, together and to be in spaces? Because once you bring people together, I think that is
Community.
Yeah.
If you
And
can start
togetherness.
with community, you have this endless bound or bucket. People think sometimes, my bucket's going to get empty. If you come with a mindset of community and constantly trying to help people, your bucket is forever filled. I feel like.
Yes.
And either you or someone else, but either way, someone's pouring in, pouring out. It's just
Yes.
constantly, it's sustainable, I think. Yeah.
absolutely.
But that is it for this episode of Migrant Moods. Thank you for listening and being part of this journey.
Yes.
And thank you for joining us, Mariam,
Mariam,
today.
I'm
we
so
love,
excited.
We love having you again.
We
I
loved
know.
having you.
And you know what? I'm excited, and I know for the listeners,
Yes.
we do
you
have
want to plug anything?
Yeah, I'm ready to
You better
plug.
plug it, girl.
Plug it.
because I'm ready to plug. Because if I don't plug, there's going to be a lot of questions.
Yes, exactly.
But we have a parliamentary event that you both, because Abdullahi and Hillay, they're doing many things, but it brings me great joy to say that they're also a member of our parliamentary and policy working group. And they will be, so we're currently in the process, we're in the early stages, but we are organising a parliamentary event on the
in February.
The
so
month
it's
of February, so you guys
Monday,
look out for that.
Yeah, so it's Monday, the 23rd of February, 6 to 8 p.m.
Clock that. You
Clock
better.
that.
Clock it.
Clock it, as you say. But yeah, so we have our parliamentary event, and please take a look at, just like in terms of our social media,
Yes.
updates on
Yeah.
our campaign, and any resources. We're going to try to,
Yeah.
as much as there's a lot of policy proposals that are being put out, we're trying to stay, like, you know, trying to get as much information that we can redistribute, like you
Yeah.
said,
Yes.
sharing.
And basically just remove all the political jargon, just basically break it down for a lot of people who may not have been interested in politics before, but obviously is now because it's affecting you. It affects everyone at the moment anyway. So we're just going to try and break that down and make it more accessible. But all the resources you mentioned, from Noreem to the organisations that Abdullahi mentioned and the organisations Mariam mentioned, all the links will be in the description of this episode.
Exactly.
So look out for that.
Yeah, and don't forget to sign up to our newsletter as well, and follow us on all.
Yeah,
social
the
media
newsletter
platforms.
has so many resources, not just in terms of just stuff with migration, but it's opportunities for young migrants to sign up
Absolutely.
to. So if you're creative, I don't know, law, basically other endeavours, because you are more than the label of just migrant.
Migrant. Exactly.
Absolutely.
But yeah, check out for that as well.
Yes, thank you guys.
Thank you both so much.
Releasing a new episode every Thursday, so be sure to follow us wherever you get a podcast from, so Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc.
Anywhere.
Basically anywhere. So don't miss
We're
it.
global, guys. We're global.
But yeah.
Do we say, like, subscribe?
Yeah, subscribe, like,
and
comment.
and share. Share with your people.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
I guess everyone just say bye in their native languages, I guess, to end off.
Bye.
Assalamualaikum.
Udabo.
Udabo.
Bye. And that's a wrap.